Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. It's the end of August, which means another month of favorites, or a month that has passed us where I used, read, and participated in activities that entailed various materials. And so it's a bit of a reflection time to share with all of you some of my favorites, and for me to look back on what I was using, in what ways, and for what ends to meet what means. So, without further ado, I'm going to get into my favorites for the month of August. We're going to do decks as usual, followed by books, and then we're going to move into the more miscellaneous category where there might be magical items, lifestyle related things. So if you're looking to kind of skip around, that's the order I generally tend to go in. We're sipping our coffee, and we're going to chat about some fun, exciting things. So without further ado, we'll start with the decks, and I will do tarot before oracle. We have 4 decks, 3 of which are tarot, 1 of which is oracle. So I'll start with one that I haven't ever mentioned in a video thus far up until this point, and this month a big favorite for me was the Starlight Dragon Tarot. This is a new one to my collection, and there's a bit of a story behind it, and I also have the book here, so I guess there is a bit of a book right off the bat, but it's just the guidebook. I haven't fully read it, but I have referenced it quite a bit and kind of intend to read it, potentially, all of it. It is really interesting and insightful, and the system and the deck itself are very interesting. I'll show you guys some of the cards. It already comes with a bit of a guidebook. It has one of these kind of clasp boxes, which I like. It's matte, and it does come with a bit of a chunkier little guidebook already, which is nice. And then the title card, and this is a square deck with that sort of like semi-matte gold gilding. It's really beautiful. These are the backs. And it has a sort of interesting way, it's hard with this glare, you can see, so you'll get the number and the corresponding elemental symbol or glyph. And you'll get the majors, and for example the sun, you'll get the glyph for the sun, you'll get the Roman numeral. So all of these are almost like mandalas. They're very dragon-like, of course. It's the Starlight Dragon Tarot. This is by the same creators of, I believe it's the same, I know it's the same author, I believe. No, wait. I think it's the same author and artist as the Gypsy Palace Tarot. And I had ordered this deck back in late February, and I just got it this month because of COVID and shipping, and then there was initially delays, and then they weren't shipping from, I believe it shipped from Germany to the US, and they weren't doing that, and they still kind of aren't. But the artist and I had been conversing every couple of weeks, just doing updates, and eventually, not too long ago, she was like, oh, well, I can ship it through some other country, so she would have to ship it to that country, and then that country could then ship it to me, and I just covered the cost of shipping in between. And she was so nice about it, and she like offered to pay for part of that, and I was like, no, I will pay for all of that, you shouldn't have to. And she included a nice little extra necklace. I know that she makes jewelry based on these prints, and she included one of them and wrote me this nice little note, and she was just so kind throughout the whole process and trying to get it to me, and she never gave up, and she wasn't ever just like, oh, well, I could just refund you. She was always trying to see and wait and look for options. And so my experience with her, and both the artist and the author, or the creator and the illustrator, were very positive. I had conversations with both of them, and they're very, very sweet, and I highly recommend buying from them on their Etsy shop. So I'll try to remember and link that below, but they're just the best. But know that if you're in the US, that right now this might be hard to get your hands on, same for the Gypsy Palace Tarot and any of their other wares that they might sell on that Etsy. But it's a beautiful deck, and they're all these sorts of abstract mandala. They remind me of mandalas anyway, especially in the pips. And then the courts and the majors take on a sort of like actual dragon-like look, where it could be a dragon itself, but there's a lot going on, and if you really dig into these images, there's so much minute detail and just things to uncover, and I'm loving working with it in that way. And so it gets me thinking outside of the box a bit, so to speak, although it's quite a boxy deck. So I've really been enjoying it. It's very different. The system itself is very different. It's very elemental. I love the pops of color on the black background. The guidebook is so well done. There's a lot of psychological, spiritual, sort of abstract thinking going on, and so for that, I really enjoy those types of decks, so definitely a favorite. Just trying to not make a mess. So moving on, we'll look at, you may have known from my last favorites that I was going to work with the Tarot of the Spirit. Yeah, Tarot of the Spirit by Pamela and Joyce Eakins. This is just the title card. And so I did work with that deck. These are the backs. And it's a stunning deck. I read the guidebook, so I'll get into that in just a second, or after we finish the decks. I actually worked with it a lot less than I thought I would. I was more sort of enamored with the guidebook, and I really enjoyed it. So that part was amazing, and I do love this deck, but for some reason, I was feeling more drawn to the other decks that I'm mentioning within this month, and this one kind of took a back seat, and it has nothing to do with me disliking this deck or not wanting to work with it. Maybe it just wasn't the exact right time. I do love this deck. In theory, it's right up my alley, and actually in practice it is as well, but for some reason it did kind of sit on the back burner, although I was very much invested in the guidebook. So this has been really fun. I am planning on continuing to study and work with it. Although I finished the first core guidebook, I didn't finish the larger book, Tarot of the Spirit, or Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit, which is like twice the size of the other guidebook, so yeah. So I will get to that hopefully eventually, but been loving working with this. Just didn't work with it quite as much as I thought I was going to, given the fact that I planned and announced that I was going to spend this month with this deck, but sometimes things just work out like that. So really enjoyed that, and I keep it in this bag. I don't really even know what this is. I got it on Amazon, but I like the symbol on it. If anybody knows what that symbol is with the various circles and stars, if there's an esoteric correlation here, I'd love to know it. So that's that. That is Tarot of the Spirit. Getting into the final tarot deck, and this one will be no surprise to anybody. There will always be a version of the Thoth in a favorites from me. This is just the greenie that I mentioned last month in my favorites, and this is the one that I got that was damaged by water damaged. It came kind of with a bunch of cards that had staining and warping, but it's grown on me. I mentioned how I was looking to maybe name it, and just that there was something kind of endearing about the fact that it found a home with me, and that it was kind of very much loved and a bit battered, and for that reason it's grown on me quite a bit, and I find myself using this above all of my other above all of my other Thoth decks, so even my trimmed version, and so this would probably be my favorite Thoth deck of the month. And I keep it in this cute little bag I believe this bag is from, it says the British Museum, the trustees of the British Museum. So I got this on Amazon, but it has a little scarab on it. It's kind of cartoony and like pastel and fun and light. I don't know why I felt compelled to put it in this bag, but I like it, and I like the scarab. It's very sun card-esque in a way, so like that as well. Getting on to the last deck of the month, we have the Archangel Light Codes, Light Spectrum Key Oracle Cards by Leanne Colquette. That's how you pronounce it, I believe. Leanne Colquette. So I got these on Etsy. This is a very recent edition. I got it in the latter half of the month, but I've really been loving them. As you may know, I'm working with angels pretty heavily now as my altar. I had a recent video where I went through my spiritual space, spiritual shifts, and a little altar tour, so you may know that angels and just dipping my toes into reclaiming aspects of Christianity in my magical practice has been a journey for me, and so these have been really nice. I believe it's an Australian-based creator, and that she is the illustrator as well as the creator and author, the overall creator and author. So this took a while to arrive, just because with the times, and also to get from Australia to here is never a short journey. But it comes with a nice little guidebook. The guidebook actually doesn't give you too much to go on, which I kind of like. You'll get like a sentence or two basically for each card, and it's not at all describing the card itself. It's really speaking to the topic. So if there's a lot of the cards are angels, and then there are some that are more just keywords, but it'll give you almost, it's not quite an affirmation, it's more like a little bit of a deep dive or something for you to jump off of. So it's a nice little springboard to work from. So I like the guidebook in that way. I like that it's kind of not so detailed. These are the backs. It's a very glossy one, as you can now see my phone recording right now. But yeah, those are the backs. Has the shiny gold gilding. It's glossy, but in a way that's very slidey. So I kind of like it for that. It's a thicker cardstock too, which again, I also like. It's hard to show. But most of the cards are, almost all of the cards are basically just, they are sigils or glyphs of some sort, and the majority of them are an angel. So we have Archangel, Jophiel, I'm not that great at pronouncing these, and then you'll get the glyph, and then at the bottom you'll get the little keywords like illumination, creativity, authentic, and it's a very colorful deck. So I have Tarot of the Angels. This is one of the 2 cards in the deck that gets an actual depiction of an angel. Only 2 get this, and so it's Raphael and I believe Michael, and then they don't get keywords, but they're featured as actual angel figures as opposed to these glyphs. But I love the color tones. So, oh, I got this card today, Power. So this is one of those cards that's not an angel necessarily, but it's more of a concept. And I love these sorts of abstract, colorful sigil decks. So it's nice to be able to work with an angel or an entity or a concept in a very abstract way and meditate on that and sort of tap into it and really get to the heart of what it might mean for me in any given circumstance. And so in that way, I've really been loving using these cards. They're just kind of fun. It's nice to pull one each day along with my daily draw from the Thoth. And that's mostly how I've been using it. So it's a beautiful deck. I know the creator might have another deck already out and that there's the intention for more in a sort of series, which is why this is referred to as, let's see, this is Light Spectrum Keys 1 Oracles. So I guess there's supposed to be like a Key 2 and so on and so forth coming, and maybe you can combine them. I'm not sure how that's intended, but I got these on Etsy. They're really beautiful. I've been enjoying them quite a bit. I have the Tarot of the Angels, which is on my altar, which I've been using this month as well. I mentioned that in my other video where I talked and did an altar tour because that stays on my altar. But I find that these are just really fun and colorful, and so for that reason I've been using them more, which is why they're getting featured here. Now we will make our way into the books. Now before we start with the books, I will start by saying that I intend to do a recent reads where I'm going to do small reviews on the 4 books that I'm going to mention. So I'm not going to speak to them too much just because I don't want this video to take on a life of its own and become a big book review. So I will say just enough basically to let you know why I liked the book, but expect in the next few days a recent reads if you are curious about any of these books, where you'll get a more in-depth little review on each of them. I will say I think I'm going to film the recent reads video literally just after filming this, so if you see me in the same garb, the same lighting, and so on and so forth with the same coffee, that will be why. But I will start with this first book. And actually this is interesting. I guess I'll just mention this, and I feel like going forward, if there's ever a case where this happens, I'll mention it, of course, for the sake of transparency and such. But this was sent to me for review. This is Pop Magic, A Simple Guide to Bending Your Reality by Alex Kazemi, with a foreword by Rose McGowan. And the author, Alex, reached out to me and offered to send me their book, and I said yes. So they sent it over for review, and I thought I would just share that with all of you. It's kind of exciting. This is the first thing I've ever been sent for review, and it was kind of odd and strange, and I'd never thought that, like, just me with my small channel would ever have somebody who wanted to send something for review, but I guess that happened. So this was the first book I read of the month, and I really enjoyed it. It's a very specific type of book in my opinion, so I would say that it isn't the type of book I would have normally sought out for myself. I'd seen it in Barnes & Noble's and been fascinated by it and felt somewhat drawn to check it out, but never really set about getting it for myself. So I'm happy that I was sent this book. I think it's a great sort of timepiece and primer of, it's very much a pop culture piece. So seeing how an upcoming new generation, specifically I believe this would definitely, I think, fall into the range of appealing to Gen Z or those on the cusp of Gen Z, which is, I mean, I'm on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z. So this would fall really into that category. And there's a lot here that is just pulling from the here and the now and current culture, current pop culture in a really interesting way, and applying magic to it or filtering a magical practice through that lens. And for that, I found it very insightful. I'd never really taken an approach to magic that mirrored what Alex has presented in this book. And so for that, the perspective alone was just really valuable. I would just say that it's interesting, and I think it's worth getting out of your comfort zone and checking out books like this just to get a sort of sense of the new generation, where they're at. I don't think that either young magical practitioners or experienced and veteran magical practitioners, I don't think one is better or worse, more valid or less valid, but I do think that there is a value in understanding the full spectrum of ages and cultures present within any sort of magical community. And so for that reason, I really enjoyed reading this book. I would say that there were definitely aspects that I think I could draw from in my own practice. And while I don't think that this type of magic through and through fits or aligns with the types of magic that I practice, there are definitely aspects that I find that I either was doing or that I might want to tap into a little bit more that I hadn't considered so much. And it's interesting to see how pop culture can influence us. So I really enjoyed this book. Thank you so much, Alex, for sending it my way. It was definitely a favorite this month. And next we will, what did I finish next? I believe I finished the Tarot of the Spirit guidebook second in the month, if I'm not mistaken. So this is just the core guidebook that you can get that comes separately from the Tarot of the Spirit. And I forget how many pages it is. It's about 400 pages. So this was a little bit of a denser read. It did take a while in the month. For a while I was just kind of rotating between this and pop magic and using, I guess, like when I would read a little bit of pop magic, I would read a little bit of this just so that I didn't get tired of one or the other, because they were very different writing styles. And this one was dense, which meant that I needed a little bit of relief, literary relief, so to speak. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I would recommend, regardless of if you work with Tarot of the Spirit or not, that you maybe pick this up. There's a lot in here on correspondences. It's very poetic, so there's somewhere between this it sits somewhere between this free-flowing spirituality, psychology, and also very esoteric lens. So all of that is very well molded. There's meditations, there's poems, there's very astute knowledge present within this book, and so for that reason I found this book very invaluable. I almost enjoyed reading this book more than I enjoyed working with Tarot of the Spirit, if that means anything to anybody, and so for that reason it was 100% a favorite. So moving right along, we have a novel, and I haven't had or read a novel or featured a novel in any of these favorites in quite some time, and it's a shame because I really enjoy reading novels, and as a child, when I was very young, I really only enjoyed reading novels and nothing else, and for me, novels are such a joy. They're not anything that I really need to set aside time for or feel like I need to apply discipline to read. I kind of just soak them up and read them really quickly, and I enjoy them for that fact. So I'm somebody who tends to like fantasy and science fiction novels. This is a YA book, a young adult novel, so it's geared toward a little bit of a younger audience. I find I still like a lot of YA books, and that they are easily digestible. So this is The Angel Mage by Garth Nix. I believe I've read other books by this author at some point in time on different subject matter. I know that there are a bunch of books by this author on topics of angels, and it's a thicker book. How many pages is it? It's a little over 500 pages, but I would say it's a fast read. It's something that you just pick up and you suddenly feel like you're a part of the world. So there's a lot of world building in here. The world is complex. There's, of course, angels and magic, both of which are very pertinent to me right now, which is part of why I picked this book up. I would say that there's extra layers for anybody reading this who is interested in esoteric aspects after reading that book. Oh my god, I always forget the name. Magic, Tarot, Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and Alchemy, I believe is the name, that one by Robert M. Place. After reading that and reading this, there's a lot of cool things in here. So there's like Neoplatonic and Hermetic aspects in here that aren't really, you don't get a lot of context or reference, and if you didn't know them already, you might just think that they're part of this specific world, and you would be able to pick up on what they are and what they mean by them, but they would use, say, the humors in terms of health, and speaking about somebody who's melancholic, or I'm trying to think, certain things like that. And I know that those were part of various philosophies, and so I found myself really digging into it. So there's actually a lot of research that went into this, and if you know those sorts of things going in, or you're knowledgeable to even a baseline degree, because I'm by no means an expert, if you're knowledgeable to even a base degree, you get an extra little added layer in this, and I really enjoy it for that. There's different parts going on. You get a lot of different perspectives, both of the antagonist or the villain, and I really enjoy that aspect because you find yourself, of course, sympathizing, and you pick your favorite characters in different parts, and it's broken down really well. I will say it's very fast-paced, that it felt like the exposition was very long, and then towards the end when everything started to heat up, that portion of the book just went by so quickly, and it was so short that I almost wish there was, I don't know, I wish that got a little bit more attention. That's all I'm going to say on that. And it's broken up into really interesting parts. There's sorts of maps and layouts of various places, so the world building in this is key, and you really have to pay attention for all of that to get a handle on it. So for anybody who enjoys very complex world building, young adult fantasy novels on magic and specifically angels, would highly recommend this, and it was a definite favorite for me. So finally, we have the Book of Enoch, no, as I mess up the name, the Book of Enoch the Prophet by R.H. Charles, introduction by R.A. Gilbert, and a new introduction by I always mispronounce his name, Lon Milo Duquette. So I think many of us are familiar with Lon Milo Duquette. And I picked up this specific translation on the book, the Book of Enoch the Prophet. I picked up this specific translation just because it's sort of vetted by Lon Milo Duquette, and I trust him as far as esoteric and, in the esoteric and all of that. And there are many translations out there, and this one goes through great lengths within the introduction to let you know the differences between various translations, and also there's a key. So there are little bits marked. There's sort of let me try to see if I can find it for anybody who's curious. Okay, I cannot find it for the life of me. I found this to be really important. Oh, okay. So you get this sort of key. So when you see these certain symbols as you're reading, it lets you know, okay, this was something that the author decided to add. This is from an Ethiopian version, and that's how it was translated. Or so you look for these little symbols, and you can know why or how a word was done, or why, for example, something was omitted. Was it just that was missing from the original version and that word is just unknown, or all those sorts of cool things. So the Book of Enoch the Prophet, this is really one of those sorts of, there are many books, for example, within the Bible, and different sects of Christianity and various offshootings of religions that are similar, Abrahamic religions, use and utilize various books and omit certain books from their religious paradigm. And so the Book of Enoch is one that's omitted from quite a good many Christian sects of Christianity. And Enoch was basically this sort of prophet who never died and just sort of ascended to heaven, body and soul. And there's a lot in here on angels and demons, and it's highly interesting. So if you're interested in a more, I would say it's dense, and you do kind of have to really interpret what's being said. But if you're interested in sort of the nitty-gritty of angels and demons and the hierarchies and the structurings of heaven and the history as it was entailed through those sorts of entities, I would highly recommend giving this a read. I just found it to be so fascinating with my studies on angelic magic and such, so highly recommend this. Really enjoyed it, and I enjoy referencing it as well, so that's always fun. So that takes us through the decks and the books. I don't really have much in terms of miscellaneous or magical materials. I have 2 crystals and a candle, so we'll just get right into those. I'll start with this candle. This is the Angel's Influence candle. If it'll focus. The focus is like not really doing much right now. So it says, may I seek and find angelic guidance and support. It's really just a little candle that I got at a metaphysical shop, but I've really been enjoying it, and I tend to light it whenever I'm doing any sort of magic, and I enjoy it as a focal point. So the reason I'm featuring it, I guess, is in that candle magic has become a little bit bigger in my practice recently. It's kind of waxed and waned over the course of many years. Right now it's more in a waxing period, and rather than just actually setting an intention when lighting the candle, having the candle there as this sort of energetic focal point or visual focal point to kind of drum up energy has been helpful, and I just enjoy it for that aspect. And then the 2 crystals are just this little amethyst point, just a small one. I've just been putting it by my bed when I go to sleep for dreams, and kind of setting intentions when I go to sleep on what types of dreams I'd like to have, or what I'd like the purpose of the dream to serve. The purpose of the dream. So I might be looking for clarity, an answer on a certain thing. I'll hold this little crystal and I'll put it right next to my bedside, so just basically a foot away from my head. And I have found that it's had interesting results in terms of what I get through my dreams. I'm not always able to interpret things so concretely or in a finite way that makes sense, but I do find that my dreams are affected by the intentions, and that sometimes they yield interesting answers that I'm able to unravel or at least contemplate in the following days. So this crystal plays a role really in just that sort of practice that I've been doing. And then finally is just this little clear quartz I cannot speak today. Clear quartz palm stone, and I've just been enjoying it for like meditation. I think that this size of this palm stone is just perfect, and it fits exactly the way I would like to within my palm. And it's a weird nitpicky thing, but a lot of palm stones are either too large or too small, and you find they make my hand uncomfortable over time. This is the kind of palm stone that I can sit in a very long meditation with and not feel uncomfortable, and it feels like it sits very neatly within my palm, which is kind of hard for me to find, and for that I've really enjoyed it. So that brings us to the end of my favorites and the things that I've been using and working with this month. Let me know what you guys thought, as well as what you have been working with and liking this month. If you found this entertaining or helpful, feel free to like and subscribe. I hope you are all well, and until next time, bye.